This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian. I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
Look, some of us are lazy, alright?
If by lazy you mean wrong.
Prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide whether the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because guess what? This film is lit.
You know what's crazy? Seven-legged aliens that experience time non-linearly. You know what's even crazier? Amy Adams wasn't even nominated for an Oscar for this movie. It's Arrival, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to the third episode of This Film is Lit. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 2016 film Arrival, adapted from the short story
Story of Your Life?
Stories of Your Life?
That's the name of the book.
Oh, that's the name of the collection. Okay.
Yeah, the story is just Story of Your Life.
Story of Your Life.
By Ted Chiang.
Ted Chiang. So we saw this in theaters when it came out in 2016, and it was one of, if not my favorite film that year. Might have been my favorite. I'm trying to think what else came out that year, and I think it probably was my favorite. And you enjoyed it too.
It's a really good movie.
It's a very good movie.
Yeah.
We just watched it again. Katie, you read the story. So Arrival 2010, directed by Denis Villeneuve, great director. He done this. He did Enemy. He did Prisoners. He did Sicario, and he's directing Blade Runner 2049, which we will be going to see and potentially. Well, it's not based on the book. We're going to do spoilers. We're going to be doing an episode on Blade Runner /
Do androids dream of electric
sleep at some point down the road here, right around the time Blade Runner 2049 comes out, because Katie's never seen Blade Runner, and that should be interesting. But, so, Denis Villeneuve directed this. It's adapted from the Ted Chiang book by a guy named Eric Heiserer, whose other biggest work was, he made the redo of The Thing. He hasn't done a ton of stuff. So it was interesting to see that he did this. He's also he's announced as adapting or creating a new Van Helsing movie coming in a couple of years. And this was photographed. Cinematographer is Bradford Young, who is an incredible cinematographer, and he is the cinematographer on the new Han Solo movie. But if you haven't seen Arrival, basically a bunch of aliens the ships show up on Earth with no warning, 12 of them, all around the Earth, and this is about the humans trying to figure out and communicate with them and figure out why they're there. That's basically all. It's
an alien movie about linguistics.
Yes, it's a real simple.
Yeah. Why
are they here? Let's try to talk to them. And because they're these giant spaceships and they're not doing anything, but they open up every couple hours and we can go inside. So let's figure out what's going on. And it's about that, and then it gets about some other interesting themes and topics later on, but we'll get to that as we go. So that is Arrival. Let's get into was that in the book? Alright, was that in the book? I got 5 questions. I want to know if they're in the book. This first one, I'm more excited for because you already said something that I cut out of the recording. Did the aliens look like giant squid beast things?
Yes.
Okay, I want to hear that description. This is kind of the only potential guess who, but it was not even a guess who.
Yeah, it would be very obvious if I read this description.
7 legs.
Who I was talking about.
Shoots ink. Amy Adams.
It looked like a barrel suspended at the intersection of 7 limbs. It was radially symmetric, and any of its limbs could serve as an arm or a leg.
Okay.
The one in front of me was walking around on 4 legs, 3 non-adjacent arms curled up at its sides. 7 lidless eyes ringed the top of the heptapod's body. It walked back to the doorway from which it entered, made a brief sputtering sound, and returned to the center of the room, followed by another heptapod. At no point did it ever turn around. Eerie, but logical. With eyes on all sides, any direction might as well be forward. And one other...
No eyes on them in the movie.
Yeah, there are no eyes on them in the movie. They've got eyes in the story.
Yeah.
One other little thing here. I heard a brief fluttering sound and saw a puckered orifice at the top of its body vibrate. It was talking.
Interesting.
And now, prior to reading this short story, I thought that my least favorite combination of words in the English language might be either moist loaf or hernia mesh.
Yes.
But now I know that my least favorite combination of words in the English language is, in fact, puckered orifice.
That is not a good one. That's real gross.
New winner.
Real gross.
And they talk out of it.
Yes. So they do look at least similar-ish.
Yeah.
To the description.
Pretty similar.
No
couple
eyes.
Small changes.
No eyes, but the 7 legs and vaguely similar. That's interesting. I kind of figured they were similar, but just wasn't sure. I didn't know. I was kind of wondering how much they stayed to the description in the book versus did their own thing. And it sounds like they stayed pretty close, but got rid of the eyes. And I think getting rid of the eyes is a good idea.
Yeah.
Because of it makes them a little more mysterious and less.
And I didn't read it, but they're still like gray and kind of skin-ish looking.
Yeah, sort of not octopus looking, but like
to me they look like in the movie they look like big hands on real
they do
fingers.
look like little hands that walk
if
around.
you've read Coraline, they look to me like the other mother's hand crawling around.
Second one that I want to know if this was in the book. How long is this book anyways? Roughly, it's a short story, roughly.
Right, it's a short story. It's in the realm of 50, 60 pages, give or take a little bit, depending on the printing.
Okay, so it's pretty short.
Yeah, fairly short.
All right. Was this in the book? The right-wing nutjob conspiracy watching soldiers who decide to blow up the alien.
Oh, no.
Nah, I knew it. I knew that wasn't in the book. They had to add some extra drama. I knew that wasn't in the book. I was convinced. I was like, that's not in there. That's interesting, because it's an interesting side story. I mean, I know why they added it, kind of. They don't really flesh it out a lot in the movie, but they just needed that extra...
It's a catalyst.
Yeah, it's a catalyst to get to going to the end there. Yeah. But I had a feeling. I was like, I bet that's not in the book. Boom, nailed it.
You know, that part of the movie I find interesting, because it's the only part of the movie that to me rings a little bit false.
What do you mean?
I just... And I don't know... But I just feel like the soldiers working on that site probably wouldn't have been allowed to watch.
100%. I have that note. I was 100%. Watch Alex Jones on loudspeakers in their barracks with guy talking about how, like, these aliens, we gotta get them, 100%, 0% chance that their commander, whoever, would let that fly. Now, I guess maybe you can just make the argument that nobody knew that they were listening to this or watching it. But still, it's like if anybody heard them watching that, they would be in big trouble, I have a feeling. All right, next one. Was this in the book today? Did they call the aliens Abbott and Costello in the book?
No.
Do they have names?
Yes, they have names.
What do they call them?
This is actually one of my things that I liked better in the story.
Oh, okay. We can wait then if you want to get to that later. We'll get to that. But they didn't have the same names in the book.
No, they don't call them Abbott.
They don't call them Abbott or Costello. All right. So far, I've got 2 of those in a row that I've corrected, figured that they changed for the movie. All right. This maybe you might not know or remember this for sure. In the book, did China communicate with the heptapods via mahjong?
No.
That was really weird to me.
Yeah.
She's like, they're using mahjong to communicate with them. And I'm like, what? Why would they do that? I don't know
exactly how... Like, I would be really interested to understand how that system of communication would work.
Yeah.
So, the thing about this adaptation is that, as we've said, it's a short story.
Yeah, so they had to add a lot.
Right. So, really, what the movie is that it's taken... the premise of this, because the story it is more of a premise than an actual story. And they've greatly fleshed it out and expanded it. There's no debacle with the word weapon being mistaken
I
for
figured
everything.
that was,
There's no issues with China or any other countries. Like, none of that is in it.
Yeah, they had to add that extra tension for the movie.
Yeah. The movie is
more solely...
It's more plot-driven.
And is it probably more focused purely on, like, Amy Adams' character, or...
No, she's still the main character.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably more... Is it not more focused on her? Like in the book, like there's less of the other stuff. Like, like you said, there's not as... I don't know.
There's not really any outside kind of conflict.
Right, that was what I was wondering. If it's more just about her...
Yeah, it's more just about her.
Which, I mean, this is too, but...
But I don't know that I would call it character-driven, necessarily.
No. Well, because it's not... I don't think it is I mean, I would say it isn't character-driven. It's definitely a plot-driven movie, because the... because the character changes because of the plot, at least in the movie, if that's the way to describe. Like, the construction of what happens with the aliens in the language is what drives the character change, at least in the movie, to an extent. So where it's almost reactionary to where it is completely plot driven as opposed to character driven, I would say. At least that's kind of how it seemed like to me, but.
I mean, the short story, it's not plot-driven, it's not really character-driven, it's more like philosophy-driven.
Yeah.
So all writing has a purpose, usually more than one, but there's still going to be, like, one main purpose. So one of the main purposes for a major motion picture is to entertain.
Yeah.
One of the main purposes of a... heady, speculative sci-fi short story is to provoke thought. And that's what this short story is doing.
And that's what the movie does. Because like I said, because honestly, it is plot driven, but it's the whole point, the themes and the questions it asks are more important than the actual story. Like what it's really just it's all just a contrivance to, more so than a lot of movies. This is a movie that is a story contrived to make you go, and think about a thing, rather than, or at least to an extent, rather than tell you. I mean, it does tell you a very interesting story, at least in the movie, but it's not like so Captain America, Civil War or whatever. There are questions that you can ask when you watch that movie, about things about
there are questions about
morality,
loyalty, morality,
and that sort of stuff. But they're all more sort of like side questions. The whole point of the movie is, let's watch these superheroes be awesome and do cool superhero stuff and weave interesting tales. This one, it's reversed. It's let's ask this really central, interesting question, which in the case of this movie is, at least in my opinion, one of these central questions it wants you to ask and think about is, if you know something has a bad outcome, if you know that life is going to end poorly, is it still worth living? And the question, or the movie's answer, is probably yes. But they kind of give you both sides a little bit, because getting into it, Jeremy Renner's character decides no, kind of, basically. So that's like the main question is what is it about life that makes life worthwhile? And if you know something's going to end poorly, can it still be worthwhile, basically? Right. Kind of. That's one of the questions. I mean, there's other things. But, so yeah, that's like the central thing. And this is all kind of just a way to make you think about that question, to illustrate that question.
Right. Yeah, the movie definitely focuses on those big questions. The story even more so.
Even more so, yeah.
It's less about aliens are here and what are we going to do about it, and more a think piece about free will and predestination.
Yeah. Yeah, which they don't quite get into as much in the movie. It doesn't feel as much like free will, predeterminism or determinism types of stuff as much. To me, it's more of in the movie, it's more of a question about what it means to live, kind of, or like what is the point of living, kind of.
No, I agree.
Where they don't really touch on so much as, like, they don't really, I mean, there is implications on free will, kind of, with this, but they don't really, that's not, at the forefront of what the movie is trying to get across. The movie is just trying to make you cry. I mean, not really, but which I did in the theaters when we saw it the first time.
Yes, you did.
All right, let's go to the next one. That's my last one, actually. Is there... Well, because you said China isn't really even in the thing.
No.
So is there a solution? Okay, so I guess this is it then. Does she call somebody, and is there the whole thing with they need their 12 pieces? I assume that's probably some... No. Wow. She basically just, like, learns the language and that sort of thing?
Right. She figures out how to communicate with them, and at the end of the story, they basically just leave. And that's where it stops.
Do they...
We don't ever know why they were there in the first place.
So there's never the scene of, in 3,000 years, we're going to need your help?
No.
So we're coming here to help you now. Okay, interesting. I kind of figured a lot of that was all added on. Like I said, the thing with the China and all that, and her calling, and my initial one was there's like this big chase scene where she calls China, and not chase scene, but like this big dramatic moment where she's like, you know, last minute calling China to, and I figured that was added, but I thought that was still an element. I figured there might still be an element of, because the other big theme of this movie, one of the other big themes, which sounds like isn't as much so in the book, if at all, is the fact that, because it's all about communication, and the idea that when people don't communicate, that's when shit, or when, you know, when we don't communicate, that's when things go poorly.
Yeah.
And that's what, obviously, I mean, it's about as obvious it gets, is that shit starts hitting the fan when all the countries stop talking to each other, and the thing that saves the day and fixes it is literally a phone call, a conversation between two people. So conversation and humanity working together is the other big sort of, which is often a sci-fi theme, at least, you know, some sci-fi. The power of humanity when we work together and what we're able to accomplish, and doing that through conversation and actually talking to one another and it's a big theme in here. So it sounds like that's probably not
that's
really
not
in the book.
Really present in the story.
Interesting. Okay, well that's all I had for is that in the book, because I figured most of them weren't, because it's only 50 pages or what have you, so that makes sense. Let's move on to Lost, an adaptation. Now this could be tough, because some of these things I might ask you probably aren't in the book.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it. So, well, I guarantee all these aren't in the book. This is going to be rough.
Is it all about China?
No. No. But I bet, I mean, I'm just thinking now that I look at it, because I should have known ahead of time with it being a short story that, and I kind of did. But, okay, well, I'm just going to go through it, and then you can be like, yeah, it's not in the book at all.
Okay.
In the book, so, in the beginning of the movie, there's the scene where she finds out her daughter is sick and has rare disease, and she like breaks down and starts crying. Now, is there a scene like that in the book early on or anything like that?
No, sort of, but no, because they changed the way that her daughter dies.
Oh, okay.
For the movie.
Interesting. Okay, well, because my question was, and we can just discuss it then in terms of the movie and what you think, is why does she break down like that? Because her reaction in that one moment, it was like somebody who doesn't know that it's going to, but she knows it's going to happen. Well, and so my only thought was that the littlest part of her was still hoping that, or something, that it wasn't going to happen, or I don't know. I
think even when you know it's going to happen, it still hurts.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And it's still going to get an emotional reaction from you.
Yeah, well, and actually, now that I think about it, even more so, it's not so much that she knew it was going to happen. The thing that hits her is that this is when it happens. It's right now. This is it.
Yeah, I mean,
and that I can totally get.
If you think about it, people die unexpectedly. I mean, people die completely expectedly all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
It was just something about her reaction in that moment. It almost came across as an unexpected, like she didn't see it coming. But I think thinking back on it, now this is one thing I wrote down, and I said it in the intro, that it's a goddamn crime that she wasn't nominated for Academy Award for this movie. Yeah. Rewatching it, I mean, I thought she was amazing the first time, but rewatching it, those opening scenes with her, when you know what's happening, that she knows, like, this is all, you know what I mean? Where it's like one of the first shots in the movie where she's sitting there in bed with her daughter before, like when her daughter's a little girl, and the way she handles that scene, you can see, and you don't even know it unless you know the outcome, but you can see the pain, but you never notice that unless you until the second time you watch it and realize what's going on. And it was God, it was so good.
I don't have any problem buying her breaking down like that. And I think, from a practical standpoint, the movie spends part of it kind of leading us astray, leading us to believe that everything with her daughter has already happened.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so that's why she seems like she's kind of in a funk.
Yeah.
For most of the movie.
Right. Do they not play it that way in the book? Because that's a pretty central thing to the story, I feel like.
They kind of do, but, reading it gives it away.
Yeah.
Because of, verb tense shift and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a little more obvious, I think, when you're reading
it
than when you're viewing it.
Well, that's one way it works so brilliantly in the movie, because you have... Yeah, the first time you have no idea. I remember watching it the first time. And
I was convinced that had all already happened.
Until a couple scenes later on where you start to piece it together. Mm-hmm. And I remember the one in particular was where she asks her mom, what's the thing where two sides, something between two sides where neither side loses or whatever. And she's like, no, it's a scientific name. And she says, I don't know, call your dad about that. And at this point, we don't know. And I'm like, I remember being in the theater being like,
And that scene actually is in the story.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's a lot shorter.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Okay. Well, then I guarantee this isn't in the book. Okay. Well, first, I'll preface with this. Do they, is there another, when the army comes and picks her up, that might not even happen. They might just start, I don't even know what I'm trying to ask. This is bad. All these things now, I'm sure they're just not in the book, so there's no. Maybe you can just explain this to me, because the second time I still didn't understand it. When she says, when they come to get her, they're going, and she doesn't want to go at first, and they go to the Berkeley guy, and she says something like, ask them what the Sanskrit word for war is and what its translation is. Mm-hmm. And then they show back up at her place, and she says, what did he say it meant? And he says one thing, and then she says, it means a dispute over goats or something like that. I don't understand what they asked her. And like I said, I'm sure this isn't in the book, so I thought maybe if it was in the book and you read it, that it would make more sense to me.
It's not in the story, but...
Did he just get it wrong? Well,
I guess... maybe the idea was that her answer is a better answer, or maybe the correct answer, like you said.
I guess it was just weird because I was like, did he know the answer? Why would the Berkeley guy not know the answer? That seems like a very easy... I don't know. Maybe somebody who's watched this movie and can explain that scene to me, because I don't... I've seen it twice now, and both times afterwards, I'm like, am I stupid? I don't get the interaction here of did the guy at Berkeley get it wrong? How would the guy at Berkeley get it wrong? He would know the Sanskrit translation for war. I feel like that's a pretty easy, anyways, that's a little thing. It's just, I didn't get it again. And I was like, man, I hope this is in the book so you can clarify what the fuck this means. Cause I don't get it. Like I said, I guess I get it. I assume it's just the guy at Berkeley got it wrong. But that's it. It just seems weird to me, the way they play it out. I'm rambling. This is stupid. All right. In the book, does she have a nerves thing, her hand shake? Is that just in the movie?
No, that's in the movie.
Okay. Because I was wondering, and I remember that the first time being is this going to be a thing? Is this going to mean something? It doesn't actually mean. She's just nervous, I guess. It's just illustrating her nerves. Yeah. Okay. But they linger on it twice, and normally in that kind of thing that means something. You know what I mean? Normally it's more than just... Because both times it's her right hand, and it's not just one time she's really nervous and sweating, and the other time her hand's shaking, and it's both times they just single in on their right hand and it's shaking, and I'm like, what?
Maybe it's just that they're trying to show her humanity.
Yeah.
In those moments.
The other thing I could think is that maybe because I was trying to think if there's, after I was thinking about it now, I'm trying to think if there was anything later in the movie that happens that is specifically related to her right hand, and somehow that, and because the whole time, that something that happened later affected her, was affecting her already, kind of, or something, you know what I mean? And I couldn't think of anything. I mean, she puts her right hand on the glass when she goes up and introduces herself, but I don't know if that would mean anything. I don't know. It was just something that because like I said, it's one thing to show her being nervous. It's another thing to super focus in on the same right hand shaking both times, I felt like.
I mean, maybe it's just to emphasize that when she does find her confidence in the situation and in what she's doing, she finds it. Yeah,
that's true. Okay. And now this is getting more into the sci-fi question. These aren't even Lost in adaptations right now. They kind of are, but they're more of like, let's try to figure this out. Is there and now I guess the idea is that it's because until she learns it can't. It's like that's like when she learns the language is like a point, and from there she can think of things non-linear. Because it confuses me on a philosophical level of how if she learns the language in the future and can then experience all time at once, kind of, or experience the future, wouldn't she already know the language before she even, wouldn't she, because if she learns it in the future, couldn't she go back? Wouldn't her past self know stories. That's my thing. I was like, wouldn't her past self then know it, kind of?
They do say that Louise experiences her life and her memories non-linearly from the moment that she learns the language up until her death, but nothing before the moment where she finally learns the language. So that's a slight clarification from the book.
But then I guess that's the problem with this isn't a time travel movie, but it kind of is. Yeah. And that's the problem with time travel is like when you start thinking about it, it starts to get a little
wibbly
wobbly, timey-wimey. Coming off that. So she writes a book about how to speak this language. Mm-hmm. And this is just a separate thing. This isn't even Lost adaptation. Maybe this isn't. Does that happen in the book? No. Okay. So she writes a book about how to learn how to read this language, which means pretty much anybody, all humans, could learn the language
feasibly,
and all of humanity could be living atemporally and know the future.
That sounds messy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. What kind of fucking havoc would that wreak if all of humanity was existing in a state where they knew the future? But then if everybody knows the future but can experiences time non-linearly, maybe that balances out to where it was very confusing to me. I'm like, when you write a book where everybody can learn, it'd be one thing if just her knew, her had that. But once everybody starts doing it, things get really weird. I feel like things get really tricky. Maybe not. I don't know. I'd be interested to see a sequel. I don't want to see a sequel. Dear God, I don't want to see a sequel. But I'm saying it could be interesting. I would be interested to hear what the author thought or his explanation would be for what happened. When they're at the gala 18 months later, and a bunch of people know the language now. There's just a bunch of humanity experiences time in a non-linear fashion, and thus kind of knows the future. Kind of. It's weird. It's very weird.
Yeah, it's a strange concept, and like we said, like a time travel story, as soon as you start to really try to parse it out, it starts to crumble.
And this is where I was talking about where you kind of have to ignore that, because that the whole point of all the time travel and the wibbly wobbly and the she's experiencing time non-linearly is to ask the audience a question and to make us think about a thing and not and the thing we're thinking about isn't, well, how does this work? How does this time thing work? It's about what do I value in life? What is that's the important question, not how's well, I don't know if you knew the future, but then in the past you would know already that you from the future learned the language. That's not the point. This is my last Lost in adaptation, and I just wonder what you think about it now. So for some reason, why do you think when so at the end of the movie, she has to call China to get them to share information with them so that everybody can share all their info and piece it all together. And basically, it's like the Rosetta. They have to piece together the 12 pieces of the Rosetta Stone for the language, essentially, even though she's already speaking it by that point. But whatever. So she calls the Chinese general or whatever. And then it's cutting between her on the phone with him, telling him this thing, and her in the future, 18 months from now, talking to him where he tells her what she told him. Now, but here's the thing that's weird to me. Why is she surprised by what... So when he's telling her, like, she's like, it's like she's never heard this before. But she would have already have heard this. It's the only time in the movie where this happens, where she doesn't seem to know, like, this is something that happened in her past. Kind of, technically. But somehow she doesn't know it in the future until he tells her, and then she... Okay,
so my initial thought...
we going in the weeds, boys.
Me, was that maybe she, like, wasn't expecting him to tell her, like, maybe she didn't know when he was gonna...
Right, and this is the moment, and she's like, holy cow, this is...
But we see her remembering it, and if she's experiencing time non-linearly, she should know that he's gonna tell her. I don't know.
I know. It gets so muddy when you start asking all those questions. I know. I'm just like, I was going off in the weeds on it this time. I was like, oh, fuck, wait, why is she... Oh, no. Okay. I gotta stop thinking about that stuff and just cry because she loves her daughter so much. It's time for Better in the Book. What's better in the book, Katie?
What's better in the book? So, don't know if it's necessarily better or worse. It's kind of... It's just a difference that I want to bring up, because I think it's an interesting change when you take something from a short story into a movie. But the alien, like, the sounds that they make... Yeah. Are, like, way more sinister sounding in the movie than they're described in the book. Like, movie language kind of sounds like really ominous mechanical sea creatures. Yeah. It's like whale noises and like weird clicking and...
Like alien, like standard alien noises. Yeah.
Pretty standard. It kind of sounds like it's underwater and it's weird and echoey.
Yeah. Well, because that chamber they're in is like... Yeah. Kind of watery, but not... You know what I mean? It's kind of like this weird aquatic... white fancy mist aliens, space dust.
So the language in the book is described more as like a fluttering sound.
That could be creepy too.
Yeah, I know, I agree. It's like a soft fluttering bird wings or something. Which actually does bring me to something that I liked more in the short story, which is the names of the aliens.
Oh yes, that's right. We put a pin in this earlier.
Yes. So in the movie they call them Abbott and Costello, and in the book they call them Flapper and Raspberry.
What? Flapper and Raspberry is one of them like
because they make like it's like noises,
and then the other one the fluttery
they flutter and they make
wow
Flapper and Raspberry.
Flapper and Raspberry.
And
that's
I
fun.
Just enjoy those names so much more because they're so ridiculous. Yeah. And they're like cute sounding.
Yeah. Flapper and Raspberry. Oh my goodness.
That's like something you would call your cat.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. Does one of them die in the...
No.
Yeah, that whole thing doesn't happen. No, so I didn't know if something else happened to it. Yeah. I get why they changed it. Mainly because they don't make those sounds. Yeah. So that makes sense. I can't call them that because they don't sound like that. So... Anything else better in the book?
One thing that I'm a little torn on, because I liked it in the story a little better, I think, but then there are a lot of other, like, issues attached to that. So we kind of touched on this before, but in the movie they show her being nervous and, like, kind of having some, almost like the beginnings of like a mental breakdown.
Yeah, she's definitely got some anxiety going on.
She's shaking and having like nightmares and stuff. Yeah. And none of that is in the story.
Well, she's not having she's having, I guess she kind of does that one time.
having a nightmare that one time.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's so much a nightmare, but kind of, it's a weird dream where the alien's in the room with her. And yeah. Anyways,
I thought it was creepy.
Well, it's creepy to us because it's so sudden, but I don't think it would be like, because she doesn't view them as... scary, so to her it wouldn't be a nightmare per se. It's just a weird dream.
Well, then, like, the first time she goes up in the ship, she, like, kind of starts hyperventilating.
Yeah, because she's in an alien ship.
Right. So none of that is in the story. She's pretty, like, stoic and badass in the story. And on the one hand, I kind of like that interpretation of it. I kind of like how it doesn't really feed into that stereotype of women freak out easily.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think it's realistic.
Yeah, it's super realistic. And it's not just her. Jeremy Renner throws up after he gets out.
Yeah, that's
you know what
fair.
I mean? Like, and they cart a guy out who could, and they specifically say, well, you're doing better than the last guy did.
Yeah.
And I think it's completely realistic because they're in an alien fucking spaceship.
It's completely realistic, and also from a practical standpoint, again, they're leading us to believe that she's still grappling with the death of her daughter.
That too,
she's probably depressed.
That too.
And
also, it gives her, it's a good slight character development for her when she finally has that moment, because it's the build up to that moment when she takes the not the spacesuit, but the hazmat suit off.
Yeah.
You know, that's it's a small character.
Right, where her desire to do this
to learn more
her fear. Yeah.
And it's a big character moment for her.
No, I agree. And it's not necessarily something that I like better in one or the other. It's just something I feel a little torn about.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I say, because people taking their hazmat / spacesuits off at stupid times is one of the worst things to me in movies. It's Prometheus. But in this one, I think it's so like this one I could see, because I was like thinking like, okay, so why isn't it like, so in Prometheus it pissed me off so much because they land on the planet and with that they check and they go, the air's breathable, and then they immediately pop all their helmets off. They don't check if there's pathogens. They don't know anything about anything else that's going on. They just know that the atmosphere is roughly the same as Earth, so it's breathable. But they have no idea what else is down there, and they all just like pop their helmets off, and I was like, fuck, okay. But in this one, so I was like, why is this one not bother me when she because it serves the purpose of the plot,
right? In
a way that makes sense, and in this situation, it actually doesn't matter. Like, even if she were to get sick or get something that was going to kill her at some point, this is kind of more important. Not more important, but like she makes that wager. She goes in her head and goes, okay, this is. You got to do this. Like, this is.
Yeah, she weighs it out and decides.
Yeah, it's not a. No, we'll be fine. Fuck it. Like, she doesn't just. Oh, you know, if she walked in right away and she's like, oh, it seems nice in here. Why are we wearing these stupid things? That would be stupid. Right. But this is a calculated moment where she makes a decision and weighs the consequences and goes, you know what, we got to do this. And I might die. That's a thing in her head probably, but she's like, we have to do this. So that's why it's better. It's one of the many reasons that their Arrival is slightly better than Prometheus.
Just slightly?
By slightly, I mean, it's... Oh my god. This is the anti-Prometheus. Alright, is there anything else that's better in the book?
I don't think so. Okay. It's almost like comparing apples and oranges.
I had a feeling as I was watching this, and I was thinking, you know, this is one of those ones where it's... This story screamed for a visual medium, and the way they do it, especially the way the story is told, when you were describing how, like, you can kind of tell when things are in the past and the things with her daughter, and that was dying to be put on screen, where you're able to guide your audience down the path you want to without giving anything away until you want to, and then have those powerful moments later in the film that fucking knock the wind out of you. Like, what? Better in the movie.
Some specific things. So the movie, like we were just saying, visual medium, and they really go all in making the alien ships alien.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. Was there a description of the alien ships in the movie or in the book that you remember, or is it vague, like they're just big or something?
So the story what the story describes is basically her workspace where she interacts with them. And she describes it as being like a giant looking glass, like a big mirror.
That's kind of how it is.
Which is kind of what we get, but they don't like go up inside something. It's there, and I kind of prefer the way it's done in the movie, and it's it's creepy.
Well, it's creepy, and you get that great opening sequence, but that great sequence where they first get up into it, and the gravity shifts, and it gives you that, it puts you on edge completely immediately because it could not be more alien and more weird. And then it also gives you that great moment of visual symmetry between the opening shot of the film, which pans down the ceiling of her house to her big bay windows in front of the lake that she lives on. And the exact same shot happens numerous times down the ceiling of the spaceship down to the big white looking glass that they communicate through. And they use that similar visual numerous times throughout the film. The other thing they do visually that I thought was really interesting is that, especially early. So time is circular in this film. Their language is circular. I assume it's similar in the book. Probably the description of how the language looks is similar-ish.
It's similar-ish,
yeah. So it's rings, it's circular. When she begins to experience time non-linearly, it's not that she's experiencing it circularly, but the implication of the language and that sort of thing is that there's no beginning, there's no end. It's circular, but there's a lot of very striking circular imagery very early in the film that then echoes throughout with the language and that sort of thing. But there's the shot right when her daughter dies, where she's walking down that hospital hall, and it's a constantly curving circular hospital hall. Which, how many circular hospital hallways have you ever seen?
Yeah,
never. I don't know if they're always straight. I mean, they're always straight. And this one is it's a circular hospital hall. The auditorium the lecture hall that she teaches in has all of these semicircular desks going up. And then the way the ships are designed obviously have that very striking curve to them. And there's a lot of circular imagery that they punctuate through the movie. And especially the one that hit me the most was that shot of her walking down the hallway. It's a dolly and continuously curving shot down the hallway. It was really interesting. One of the things you can do with a visual medium.
Thing about the language too. It's described as looking kind of similar, not exactly. The story describes it more as almost like circular, like lattice work, and whereas in the movie it looks almost like ink blots.
Yeah, it is like because they're kind of squiddy, so they make them inky.
Yeah, but one of the interesting things in the story is that it's the language itself that kind of gives her first clue about how they experience time.
They do that in the movie, don't they?
Well, specifically because, like, the way that their grammar works, the language, it's so complex, and the way that they would have to write it, they would have to know, like, exactly where they were going before they even started.
Yeah, they say that in the movie. Yeah, remember they say that in the movie. They say because it's since it's the circular language, he says it's like if you were writing. Jeremy Renner says this, I think. He says it's like if you were writing with both hands towards the middle, and he says you would have to know where you were going before you started. Okay, yeah. And then, so they do explain, or they do, and that's their first thing they.
Yeah, that's her first big kind of aha moment.
Yeah, that translates in the movie. It's during his big monologue, I think, like in the middle where they kind of have that time. Jump where they've been there for a month or whatever. Oh, yeah. And he's going through and he's talking, and I think one of the things he says is he explains that their language is circular and thus it's not temporal, basically. Which is why you get my favorite sentence. Abbott is death sentence or death sequence. Abbott is death sequence. It's a great sentence. Oh, that's so funny.
Sad,
I know it is sad, though.
It's so sad.
What else is better in the movie?
They changed Jeremy Renner's character's name.
What's his name?
His name is Ian in the movie. In the book, it's Gary.
Way better name. Gary's a gross name.
Ian is a world's better name than Gary.
Yes.
Sorry, any Garys that may be out there listening.
I mean, Gary's fine, but Ian's a much better name. Jeremy Renner wouldn't be able, if every time Jeremy Renner was on screen, he was like, "My name's Gary." I'd be like, "No, it's not Jeremy Renner. Look at you. Your name's not Gary."
Maybe Jeremy Renner insisted that they change
Yeah,
it. Maybe
he probably
read
was.
the script and was like, you're not going to call me Gary.
I'm not going to sit here and do lines to Amy Adams and have her call me Gary. I can't. My ego can't handle that. I can't look at Amy Adams in the face and have her call me Gary. What else?
The way that her daughter dies.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you said that was different.
Right. She has a rare disease.
In the movie.
And she dies, like, in her teens. It's implied.
Yeah, like late teens, mid-teens, yeah.
But she's still a kid.
Yeah.
So in the book, she dies in, like, her mid-20s in a tragic mountain climbing accident. She, like, falls off the face of a cliff.
Wow. Well, that's interesting, because that actually has some implications to it on the morality of the decision Amy Adams makes to me, I feel like.
Oh,
maybe.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Thought of that.
There's some different implications there of her dying in the peak of her life doing something she loves versus slowly, sickly in a bed in a hospital.
True.
I think there could be, you could argue that in the book it makes Amy Adams' choice more defensible. Not that it's not defensible to begin with, but I think I think you could argue it's I don't know. I could go both ways on it, but
I also want to add here that in the book, since they touch more on determinism, they don't really play the choice that Louise makes in the movie as much of a choice in the book. It comes across as more of what she does because since she experiences time non-linearly, she is now in a deterministic setting. I don't know, for lack of a better word, but basically it's not played as a choice in the book, so it's not looked at as a moral decision one way or the other, where I feel like in the movie that's kind of the angle they're going for, because they drop all of the determinism and that sort of thing, at least all the overt determinism discussions that take place in the book. So just wanted to add that in here because we didn't touch on it too much.
I think if it's something like that, like you described from the book, that it's more defensible than than knowing that she's going to die slowly and painfully of a disease. Maybe. I don't know. I could see how you could make the argument that subjecting your future daughter to the pain of a slow, sick death is much, at least if nothing else, less moral than her falling off a cliff and probably dying instantly, healthy, apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking the movie way she dies is maybe a little more tragic.
Yeah, I'd say it is. It definitely is, which is kind of my to my point of it. I think it affects the morality of Amy's decision.
Why they made that decision?
Maybe to try to make it a little more. Well, it's also sadder. Yeah, it makes for more because she can sit there. That you can have the shots of Amy Adams sitting there, whereas otherwise,
hospital bed.
How does she gets a phone call like your daughter died? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, in the book, it's her identifying the body.
Okay, well, yeah, that would be, but still, it's even that being said, are they going to show a whole thing of her daughter falling off? It would just be weird. Like the sick in the hospital bed's way easier. It puts it real close to Amy Adams, and it makes it's more affecting on her. Well, I don't want to say it's more affecting, but it's more affecting on us, at least, I think, as an audience.
I think it would be because she's there for the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, that's the other thing, though, is it also, to go back to the morality thing, it puts more on her shoulders.
Yeah.
To have to go through all of that with her daughter. That's more... So not only, her daughter's got to go through it, which is a tougher time, which she takes into account, but she also has to go through it. Whereas if it's just her daughter falls off a cliff one day when she's 25, it's not like Amy Adams is, in the hospital for weeks with her,
That's true.
You know what I mean? Watching her daughter slowly deteriorate. So, yeah. I totally get why they changed it. Totally makes...
Yeah.
Works better, I think.
Really struck me when we started watching the movie that if you've already seen it or if you have read the story, how much those first few lines of voiceover
give away the entire story.
Yeah.
Right. We were watching it, and I was like, wait, Really?
That's
They
the
said
ending.
that in the
Yeah.
very beginning of the movie? Was I an idiot that I didn't notice that? Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. It's funny. I don't remember what the lines were now. But yeah, I thought the exact thing. It's like the first opening 3 lines she says or something like that.
Like, she says something about time not being linear.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
specifically.
I know. And for some reason, and it's not like just us. Like, nobody...
Yeah.
Like, for whatever reason, you just don't even... Because you don't know... Because they did a good job in the movie, or in the trailers and everything. I'm not spoiling anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you have no idea what the twist is. Like... But yeah, they totally... She just says it in the beginning of the movie. And I was sitting here today, I was like, well, son of a bitch! I feel stupid.
I don't have any more specific things about the story, but I do want to talk about Ted Chiang for a minute, because this guy is a beast.
Yeah, well, he's won a bunch of awards, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he's very decorated. But, like, the sheer amount of research that he had to have done just to write this one short story
50-page short story
is fucking dizzying.
Yeah.
He's discussing linguistics and physics and mathematics, and he not only has to sound fluent in all of those languages, he has to sound like a goddamn expert. Yeah. Like he has a PhD in all of those things, because all of these characters do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what that reminds me of? And this would be an interesting role reversal one, is The Martian, because I read The Martian. You have not read it. Mm-mm. So, but he did the same thing in The Martian, where he had to do a ton of research about physics, and but he's like the same thing where he for fun calculates orbital trajectories and stuff like that, because it's just the kind of people they are, and it's the same thing.
Incredible, and it's not like in a movie where you can call in expert consultants. He did all of that on his own. By himself.
Yeah, well, he's a really smart guy. He got a degree in computer.
Yeah, he's got a degree in computer science from Brown University.
Yeah, so
he's Ivy League.
Yeah. He's a smart dude.
He's no dummy.
He's a smart dude. Yeah,
but still, that's incredible.
Yeah,
this guy, according to his Wikipedia page, turned down a Hugo nomination for another of his short stories because he didn't think the story was as good as it could have been.
Oh my god.
A Hugo Award, in case you don't know, is one of the most prestigious awards in the sci-fi fantasy genre. He basically turned down the sci-fi version of a Pulitzer.
Yeah. Don't mind me. I'm just turning down Lifetime Achievement Awards because it could have been better. Jesus.
What are you about?
Well, he has.
Ted?
Doesn't he also have another couple Hugos or something
He's got a couple.
So it's not like there was his only chance at it. Yeah, that's crazy. I'm going to read this one.
I think you should.
We've decided I'm going to read
it.
this one. I'll be interested to see what I think of it. I like those kind of authors that do that with their work. Something like I said with The Martian, which I really enjoyed, which was written by Andy Weir. I really like those where the authors do a deep dive and really know the topic, and because it just fleshes out the story and makes it that much more, especially with sci-fi.
Yeah,
it makes it that much more believable. It's like the opposite of Stephanie Meyer when she writes sci-fi, where everything's just silver.
Science babble.
It's just words, and then everything's chrome. Well, I don't know if that's how it is in the books, but that's how it is in her stupid movie.
You're not far off from Twilight there, though. It's just words and everything sparkles.
Yeah. It's just how it's the same thing with the host. It's just...
You know what? We'll get there.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Oh, boy. Oh, I had a couple things I wanted to talk about in the movie. Just a couple little things that I noticed that I thought were interesting. The one, I'm really interested to see what Bradford Young, the guy who was a cinematographer for this movie, does with Han Solo, because this is such a distinct visual style, and it works so well for this movie, but I can't see it working for Han Solo. It's going to have to be very different, because it's so dark and so natural and so almost looks like a documentary to an extent.
Yeah.
It's filmed like a movie, but the lighting, it's almost all, it at least looks like almost all natural lighting.
Yeah.
To where there's lots of dark, lots of, there are a lot of scenes where people's faces are not well lit, and they're in they're in the base camp and stuff. So it's really interesting. It's a very distinct visual style. It's gorgeous. I forgot how completely gorgeous this movie is. But one of the little things that I liked, that I noticed that was really interesting, that opening, or that scene when she first gets to base camp, it was such a smart decision, probably by either him or the director or whoever, to have the camera follow her right behind her as she follows them and winds through that base camp, because the way the camera moves and the way it's lit, it really sells you how overwhelmed, and like not overwhelmed, but how overwhelming this whole situation is, where it's like this maze that they're winding through and you're getting disoriented because the camera keeps turning every time they turn in a hallway, and it's moving kind of quick, and there's like, you can't even take in everything you're seeing. And I was like, exactly felt what I imagined her character would be feeling in that moment of just overwhelming. Like, wait, what was that? Where are we going? What? Whoa! Now we're going over here, and what was that over there? Like, amazing, just perfect. The perfect way to shoot that scene when they enter that base camp the first time, or when they're going through the inside of it. And it was not something I really noticed or stuck out to me the first time, but this time watching it again, I was like, oof.
Yeah, it's really nice when film can do that.
Yeah.
When it can make
really make you feel like what that. And, I probably noticed it the first time, but I was so caught up in the moment feeling that I wasn't able to divorce myself from it and realize that that's what was happening. But, yeah, and there's lots of things throughout that movie, like the scene, another similar one, that scene where and you feel, I felt it in my stomach this time even, when that elevator goes up the first time they're going in and it hits the top and they all bounce like 6 inches into the air. I could feel it, the butterflies in my stomach when that happens, like in the same way, where it's just like the way they shot that and the way it happens and the sound when they hit there, it's like, whoo, oh god, like we flying now. This is it. Which one's better, the book or the film?
Like I said earlier, it is kind of apples and oranges, and it's hard to really say one is definitively better than the other, because they're setting out to do very different things.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty different things. For me, I think the film edges out the short story a little, just because it is a bigger world, and they're able to give it, to me, they're able to give the things that are happening a little bit more meaning than we see in the short story.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think, and so that we're chalking another one up for the movie, for film, but I think another big thing that helps, the score in this movie is phenomenal.
Yes.
And that having that score throughout is so impacts the way the movie affects you and the things you're seeing affect you, that I imagine if you were just reading it with that score on would probably even you know what I mean, would add to it that much, so that even something as simple as that, not simple, it's a fucking score that's like half the movie, but I think having that and it's such a visually breathtaking movie that it becomes such an experience,
right, that
it would be hard to capture that in a book.
No,
the same way.
Like we said, it really is a story that screams for a visual medium. Yeah. And I think that visual medium helps it edge out the story a little bit.
Cool. That's going to do it for this episode of This Film is Lit. That was our discussion of the 2016 film Arrival, based on the short story Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. You can check it out, read it, let us know what you thought of the book or of the movie. You can do that by going to our Facebook page, facebook.com/thisfilmislit. Give us a like and a follow. We post fun articles. We'll let you know what movies /books we're going to be doing next. We'll let you guys eventually, once we get more people on there, just say what you were more interested in seeing us do, so that we can kind of do what you guys want to hear.
We'll consider your suggestions.
Consider suggestions. I mean, we have a giant list already of things we want to do. So odds are, if there's something, and I don't want to say odds are, but we have a giant list. Right. So it's we'll get there probably.
And eventually, too, if we start doing stuff that has multiple film versions, I would like to hear what version people would like to hear us talk about.
Yes, because there's lots of novels, especially older novels, obviously, that have 5 different adaptations, and we're not going to do all 5. So we'll let you guys kind of point us towards one, and then we'll talk about that one. If you would help us out a lot, if you could go to our iTunes or our Stitcher, either one or both, give us a 5-star rating and write a little review. It really helps out us getting recommended and going up the recommendation chart in iTunes and on Stitcher and that sort of thing. So if you do that for us, we would love you forever. For our next episode, we will be talking about The Wizard of Oz. That's right, the classic. Yes, it's based on a book, duh, everybody knows that one. That one's not a surprise.
Join us down the yellow brick road next time.
Goodness, you.
I did it. I did the thing.
You did the thing. Thank you for once again listening to This Film is Lit.